He never marries another wife while being married to Khadija radiallahu anha. And for the 10 plus, 15 plus years that he's married to her, close to 25 years they remain married, the Prophet ﷺ doesn't marry another wife. And multiple children are born from Khadija. All of his sons except Ibrahim are born from Khadija radiallahu anha, and a number of his daughters. And so this continues. Now the household of Khadija radiallahu anha, many of us might think it's just a household with her children with the Prophet ﷺ. Actually, her household, she has children from previous marriages. And then the children of the Prophet ﷺ. And then Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, who was the Prophet ﷺ's cousin. But because Abu Talib was poor, the Prophet ﷺ tried to reduce his burden and take some of his children. So he took Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then Zayd ibn Haritha, who the Prophet ﷺ adopted as a son. This is a very large household. And they were very accommodating. And Khadija radiallahu anha never complained. Who are all of these children? Who are these other cousins of yours that I have to take care of? She never complained. And one of the most phenomenal things about their marriage is what Ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentioned in Fathul Bari, that she never had an argument with him in 25 years of marriage. And no other wife of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam had that privilege. The marriage continues, and the Prophet ﷺ begins to see dreams. We know from one of the first ahadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, Babu kayfa budi al-wahyu ila Rasulillah. How did revelation begin? It began with a ru'ya sadiqa, true dreams that the Prophet ﷺ used to see. And he would wake up from these dreams disturbed, confused. What does it mean? And who would he confide in him? Who would he confide in? His wife, Khadija radiallahu anha. He's not sure what these dreams mean. He's not sure what the interpretation is. Where is it leading him? And Khadija radiallahu anha, consistently she reassures him, don't worry. This isn't an evil sign. You're not possessed. There's nothing wrong with you. And the Prophet ﷺ starts feeling a craving to be by himself. حُبِّبَ إِلَيْهِ الْخَلَاء. So he would go and he would stay in the cave of Hira for a number of days. And he would go and stay in the cave of Hira, and Khadija radiallahu anha wouldn't complain. She would support him. She would send him food. She would sometimes make the long journey from their house to the cave of Hira just to provide him with provision so he could continue staying there. Whichever direction he went, she supported him silently, reassuringly. And whenever he was disturbed, he knew she was there at home. That peace and that source of contentment was there for him to return to. And one day, while he's in the cave of Hira, the angel Jibreel alayhi salam descends to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and squeezes him, as you all know, 3 times. And he recites the first 5 verses of the Quran that get revealed. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. And the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what's his reaction to this? He is scared and he's shocked. And he runs down the hill, he runs down the mountain from the cave of Hira. And those who've made the trip to Umrah, you know that if you've climbed that mountain to the cave of Hira, and now it's a paved road, it's a long journey. It's not a trip around the corner. It's like an hour of walking. And that's with a paved road up the hill. So he runs, imagine how long that journey was. And as he's running down, every tree gives him salam. And every rock says salam to him. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. And the Prophet ﷺ rushes. And where is he going to? You know, later in his life, there's a famous hadith. إِذَا حَزِبَهُ أَمْرٌ فَزِعَ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. That if something would shock him, hurt him, agitate him, worry him, he would rush to pray salah. And he would say, أَرِحْنَا بِهَا يَا Bilal. Oh Bilal, give me peace. Call the adhan. That was his source of peace. That was his fountain of calm. That was his therapy, was salah. But before salah existed, who was his source of calm? Who was his source of peace? Who was the one he would go to for that emotional fulfillment? Who would take care of him? Khadija radiallahu anha. As he descends from this mountain and he bursts through the door, he says the famous words, Zammiluni, Zammiluni. Dathiruni, dathiruni. Cover me, wrap me. And Khadija radiallahu anha wraps him and she holds him tight until the fear leaves him. And he says to her, after telling her the story, Inni khashitu ala nafsi. I'm scared for myself. What does that mean? He was scared that he might be possessed by a jinn, or he might have lost his mind. He wasn't sure what was happening. He was still in shock. And in that moment of shock, in that moment of self-doubt, Khadija radiallahu anha, she says some words. If this was the only sentence Khadija radiallahu anha ever said in her life, it would have been enough to know her status. كلا والله لا يخزيك الله أبدا أو لا يحزنك الله أبدا. She says, no way, by Allah, I swear by Allah, Allah would never humiliate you by making you lose your mind or making you possessed. إنك لتحمل الكل وتقري الضيف وتعين على نوائب الخلق. You are the one, you stand up for the weak and the downtrodden. You entertain your guests. You are there for the needy. A man with your character, Allah would never humiliate. Answer me one question. How did Khadija radiallahu anha speak on behalf of Allah? How does she know what Allah would do and wouldn't do? Allah's not revealing Quran to her. She's not a prophet. She's not a messenger. How did she know in that moment what to say to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? This is the wisdom of Khadija radiallahu anha. This is why she is special. This is why she was known as Sayyidatu Nisa'i Quraysh, the princess of the people of Quraysh, of the women of Quraysh. There was no woman like her. And she reassures him in that moment of uncertainty, in that moment of doubt, in that moment of fear. And this starts a pattern that continues for the worst years of his life. Every time he comes home, after the Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt throws camel dung on his head, after he's hit, beaten, screamed at, cursed at, he comes home and who does he find? The warmth, the reassurance and the softness of Khadija radiallahu anha. And she says to him, come with me now to my uncle Waraqa ibn Nawfal. And so she takes him to Waraqa, who becomes one of the earliest Muslims after Khadija. But by her reassuring him, something very profound happens. She becomes the first Muslim to accept Islam on the hands of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's one interesting thing. He didn't give her da'wah. He never invited her to Islam. He never said, why don't you believe in my message? He just came down fearful and uncertain, and she said, don't worry. You came with a message from Allah. You are a messenger. Don't worry. Allah would never humiliate you. She believed before he was on a mission. Before he started da'wah, she was the first believer. And what an honor and what a status to have for Khadija radiallahu anha, the first Muslim in the history of Islam, the first person to accept Islam. Khadija radiallahu anha then takes the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to her cousin Waraqa ibn Nawfal. And Waraqa ibn Nawfal hears the story and he tells him, I wish I was here when your people kick you out of Makkah. وَلَوْ كُنْتُ مَعَكَ لَنَصَرْتُكَ نَصْرًا مُؤَزَّرًا. If I was here, if I am here, Allah gives me life, I will be your support. And who's listening when he says this? Khadija radiallahu anha. She realizes the burden that's about to be unleashed onto her shoulders. And that burden is the support, being the backbone of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has no crutches. He has no wheelchair. He has no backbone, but he has Khadija radiallahu anha. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she is his support. His moral, emotional, religious, spiritual support, she is there for him. And she continues to be that for him. And every time he comes home, she's there. And Khadija radiallahu anha, in her gentleness, in her love, and in her care, she gives him the best years of his married life, of his life as a married man.